I want to take a few minutes and answer your questions from Module 5's discussion board, as well as address some things that I've noticed, a couple aha moments for myself as I've been working through your work, grading your work. So when we look at phonemic awareness, one of the questions you guys asked it was a great question. Why gestures or actions when teaching letters? Why do that? And I want to pull you back to what we know about baby sign language. And so I've actually included some research here from ASHA, which is the Speech and Hearing Association. It houses a lot of the research regarding language development. And in this case, we're talking specifically about baby signs. And we know baby signs work because we know that children can use motor movement and gestures to convey meaning very purposefully much earlier than they can usually articulate words. We also know sometimes that by pairing a verbal articulation with that gesture helps build the language itself. And so again, the reason why, it's a multi-sensory approach. It's scaffolding. So scaffolding, think about what it is in real life, goes up a building, supports the building and the workers. You're supporting the building of learning, the concept you're trying to teach with different kinds of connections and different ways of teaching. And when you add a kinesthetic, a whole body movement to something, you're giving a resource, a reminder, a cue. So some students will learn it and never use it. Some will learn it, use it a little while, quickly let it go. Others will have to hold on to that action a lot longer. When I taught kindergarten, I used animated literacy. Every letter had a different action that went with it. Most of them were very gesture oriented. There was cutting, chopping for CH. There was bowing, and it would go on. I think this was violin, okay? And so it was multi-sensory. And I would have students that they knew the gesture, but they never needed to use it. And I had students that would use it for a little while, and then it quickly went to the wayside. And there were some students that needed those gestures a lot longer. The key is when we had to do assessments on them, and every quarter, and we'd go through the list of the alphabet and look at chunks even of words, blends and digraphs, and they would have to tell me name them and the sound they make. This was kindergarten, mind you. And what was amazing is when testing, you could see some kids would sit there and go, B, that's B, says B. And so that you would see them do the action, and then they make those connections in remembering. We know that because of how the brain is. It's all connected. And the more that we can use the different parts of our brain when we teach, the more effective and efficient our teaching will be. So should you use this? Probably. Figure out something that works. There's a lot of freebie ideas out there now. I know a lot of you aren't given a strong curriculum, and so you have to build your own to a certain degree. But use what you're learning here to judge and critique those ideas that you find. How to beat out syllables with children. The student specifically asked, the idea of putting toys on the floor and helping children sort them by the number of syllables that match the syllables in their name was new to me. For some of my children in the class, it may be too advanced, but I know that other children would enjoy the challenge. Do you use musical instruments? Do you clap? Do you pat? So some guidelines on this. Whole group versus small group. Just like you're having to do your plans for next in this current module, module 6, you're going to build this whole group idea, and then how do you challenge these different groups? Your group that didn't get it and needs more time. How do you support the group that they got the whole group activity? Now they just need to practice with it. And how do you challenge this group? So for this student's example, you may lay out and introduce this activity to the students of sorting toys by colors and giving them, a different piece of paper with a 1 and a big 2 and a 3. So you do that. You introduce it as a whole group pretty quickly, mind you. You don't spend oodles of time to make sure everybody gets it. Because then in small group, you're going to allow that higher group to be challenged with it and excel and be very independent. You're going to have your middle group who they need a little bit of support, a little bit more time, maybe slightly slower pace to practice it. Then you need your lower group where you're just going to take the numbers away and you're just going to work on clapping the beats and maybe matching if they can. But if they can't, that's okay. You're just going to practice clapping the beats. Once they're good at that, you're going to maybe move to two different two syllables versus 5 syllables. Those are pretty big differences. And so a child would hear, oh, this one has many more beats than this word. Okay, so you're going to scaffold that learning in the small group. When you talk about clapping or stomping or musical instruments, you want those to be crisp sounds. Maracas are not necessarily a good idea because there's going to be a lot of after sound. A tambourine, you wouldn't want to hold it and shake it. You might be able to put it on the floor and hit it, but even that, it kind of has an after sound. So you really want to do something that's crisper, cleaner in sound. You can even use your whole body. So like you can do big boy, bubble. See how I'm stopping? And you could actually go through with your class. You could make a circle and you could go big balloons in the sky. And you're stomping out the sounds. So before we even get to counting and comparing, we're just going to stomp out the parts. And some of them are words and some of them are syllables. It doesn't matter at first. Then we're going to think just words. See the difference? Okay. Visual. The nice thing about sorting onto paper is you have a visual for the kids to put things on. But then think about how you can have a chart and how you might put things on a chart. You might have a chart that you lay on the floor that's all divided and the kids put the pieces like a bar graph going up to compare the toys or the objects, how many you have. But all of a sudden, you're now incorporating very effectively math. And you must make sure that you're not assessing math when you're wanting to assess the word knowledge or the sound proficiency, right? So you have to make sure you understand where the child is having difficulty. In watching an observation the other day, there was a girl, she could beat the sounds of her name, Mallory. She could not tell you that she had 3 syllables in her name. It wasn't a beating problem. It was math. So what do? My suggestion was the teacher looks at the student. The student says, Mallory. Great. Do it again. I count. You beat. And she does it. And you do it. Mallory. You've got your fingers out. All of a sudden she's like, 3. I got 3. Do another one. Computer. Headphones. Math. And so all of a sudden she's doing that and you're counting and she's getting confident. And over time, she'll start being able to count because she's having to think less about breaking the word into parts. Last trick on syllables. They can be tricky. If you're not sure, put your hand under your chin. And how many times does your jaw actually move? Beth is 1 syllable. Ann. It's not B-eth. It's Beth. It's Ann. Ball. Grass. Sky. Cloud. Bubble. Careful. Manipulative. Use your hand under your chin when it doesn't make sense. All right, using words to figure out other words. One of you pointed out that how in the world does corn and pork relate? How does that? And you make a really good point because you were thinking more onset and rhyme. Cat, hat, bat, sat. The only thing changing is the beginning sound. The author was making the point of chunks. So corn, if you know the OR in that word, then it's going to help you be able to sound out pork, p or k. So let me give another example of that same kind of combination of letters. Bridge and wedge, your DGE. It's complicated. Those are higher. Those are second, third, fourth grade. So bridge and wedge, once you know bridge and you see that DGE, you'll know wedge because of the DGE. Now, at our level, Caroline and Clyde is a good example. Kids will recognize their name. Caroline, I'll never forget. It's a very specific memory in my head of my daughter realizing that that was her name and being able to recognize it. And I don't know why, but for some reason she saw her grandpa's name, Clyde. She was like, that's my name. I was like, ooh, let's check. And I wrote her name out, Caroline, and I showed it to her and I showed her grandpa's name and I said, now, is that like Caroline? Do they look exactly the same? She could not name the letters. I didn't ask her to count them, but she just visually realized that there was a difference between Clyde and Caroline. And so because of that, she realized, no, that's Caroline. Eventually, the recognizing of the name comes to that spelling and learning the letters of your name. And that's something you can casually, easily teach a child. So that whole knowing helps you figure out others. It can be as simple as learning your own and figuring out how words are different too. Another really good question was about songs. Can you do too much with songs? I'm going to answer this question and then we're going to pause and I have to do a different video for the second half of the lecture. So songs, can you do it too much? Just like anything, you have a balance to your day. So of course you could do them too much, but you should be singing and using poetry every day in a language-rich environment, whether you're with infants or toddlers, preschoolers, kindergartners, first graders, second graders, arguably third graders. So I had an aha moment that we need an assignment to put all these ideas together. Before we go there, I want to show you on Pinterest. So Alan has a Pinterest page. And if you go to our communication and literacy board, I want you to look specifically for some of the chart ideas. So see how this is a rhyme we all know. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. 3, 4, shut the door. 5, 6, pick up sticks. 7, 8, lay them straight. 9, 10, a big fat hen. The kids can memorize this. They should memorize it. And then we can teach concept of word. We can do rhyming. You can take the pictures out and they have to put them in the right order. There's so much you can do. Chart poems and songs are amazingly powerful. There are so many of them out there on Pinterest. There's a lot in scholastic books, and they're easy to pair with the concepts you want to teach. It's not about how many different ones you do. It's how well you use the ones you have. So maybe you come up with 12 that you're going to use all year long at times, at different times, and make that focus. And that's what you want to do. So I have a couple pins on Pinterest that talk about that. So there's this one, and then there's this one here. Same idea, how she's written it. This one she's done writing on sentence strips. We go by car, and she drove a car. We go by plane, put a plane. And see here, the words are predictable. They're repeated every line. So then your kids who know their letters and are really starting to read, they will be able to then pick out the words we go by. And all of a sudden they're reading some of their high frequency words. All right, I'm going to pause and then we're going to talk about this kind of the idea behind the new assignment that will happen later this semester.